I've decided to start a new life without you." The words, delivered with the chilling precision of a surgeon's scalpel, hung in the air of the upscale restaurant. We were there, ostensibly, to celebrate a milestone, my daughter Amelia's college graduation. Gregory, my husband of 28 years, stood with his champagne glass still raised, his shocking announcement supplanting the toast he was meant to be giving to our daughter's hard-won achievements. Around us, the clinking of silverware ceased abruptly. Lively conversations halted mid-sentence. 50 pairs of eyes, friends and family who had gathered to share our joy, darted between Gregory's triumphant, almost smug expression and me, waiting. Waiting for the tears, the accusations, the dramatic, messy scene everyone undoubtedly expected. Instead, I smiled, a small, knowing smile that didn't quite reach my eyes but held a universe of unspoken understanding. "Congratulations on your honesty, Gregory," I said, my voice even, betraying none of the turmoil that had been my silent companion for months. "My name is Bianca Caldwell. I am 54 years old, and until that precise moment, I had flawlessly played the role of the devoted wife and dedicated mother. But Gregory, in his theatrical bid for freedom, had just handed me the script for a new role, one I had been diligently preparing to embody. He thought he was dropping a bomb. He had no idea I was about to defuse it, and him, with surgical precision. For nearly 3 decades, I had been the bedrock of Gregory's world. I'd lovingly put my own career aspirations, a dream of opening a financial consultancy for women, on indefinite hold to support him through 3 failed business ventures, 2 jarring career changes, and countless soul-searching, finding himself phases that never quite seemed to conclude. I raised our brilliant, compassionate daughter, Amelia, who sat beside me now, her graduation cap still perched jauntily on her head, her face a mask of frozen horror. From the corner of my eye, I could see Cassandra Wells, Gregory's much younger girlfriend, a woman barely older than our daughter, shifting uncomfortably at a back table. She was surrounded by people I had considered my dearest friends for decades, the same friends who apparently knew about the affair, about Cassandra, but had never found the courage or perhaps the inclination to tell me. The same Cassandra who had attended our Christmas parties, sought my advice on her career, and called me a mentor. The betrayal wasn't just Gregory's, it was a tapestry woven by many hands. With a practiced calm that belied the earthquake under my feet, I reached into my handbag and retrieved a sealed, cream-colored envelope. I placed it gently beside Gregory's dessert plate, a silent counterpoint to his verbal grenade. "What's this?" he asked, his triumphant expression faltering for the first time, a flicker of unease in his eyes. "Something for you to read later," I replied, my voice a steady, unwavering contralto. I turned to Amelia, my heart aching for her, for the public destruction of her special day. I kissed her cheek. "I am so incredibly proud of you, sweetheart," I whispered. "This day, no matter what, is still about your incredible accomplishment." Then I stood, smoothed the lines of my silk dress, and addressed our stunned guests, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent restaurant. "Please, everyone, enjoy your meal. I wish you all a very lovely afternoon." And with that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, my head held high, feeling 50 pairs of eyes following my every step. The heavy oak door swung shut behind me, a satisfying thud cutting off the incipient, anxious murmurs. Outside, the Augusta summer heat hit me like a physical blow, but I welcomed its oppressive embrace. For the first time in what felt like years, I could breathe freely, deeply. The charade was over. As I reached the sidewalk, I heard the restaurant door open and slam shut again, followed by Gregory's voice, no longer smooth and confident, but high-pitched, almost frantic. "Bianca! Bianca, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I kept walking, allowing myself that small, knowing smile once more. The envelope I'd handed him contained the meticulously prepared opening salvo of my own Declaration of Independence, a strategy I'd been carefully crafting for months. I had always been the practical one in our marriage. While Gregory chased grand, often ill-conceived dreams and took reckless risks with our finances, I was the one who maintained the stability, the financial security our family needed. I was the one who diligently saved for Amelia's education when Gregory, against my advice, invested unwisely in his friend's doomed restaurant venture. I was the one who worked extra hours as a finance manager at Truvanta Corporation, a demanding but stable job, when his most recent midlife crisis led him to abruptly quit his well-paying executive position to follow a fleeting passion for selling handcrafted, overpriced furniture. A passion that predictably fizzled out after approximately 6 months, leaving a trail of debt and unfinished projects. My own dreams were always on the back burner. After Amelia graduates, I'd tell myself, after Gregory finds some stability. Stability that never quite materialized. 3 months ago, the vague unease I'd felt about our marriage and finances had sharpened into acute suspicion. I noticed discrepancies in our joint accounts, small, recurring transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Having spent 20 years meticulously managing our family finances, these irregularities screamed red flags. I could have confronted Gregory immediately, demanded an explanation, but something held me back. A gut feeling, an intuition honed by years of navigating his mercurial temperament. Perhaps it was also the growing emotional chasm between us over the past year, the subtle but unmistakable signs that he was pulling away. Instead of a confrontation, I began a quiet, methodical investigation. What I uncovered was far worse, far more calculated than I had initially imagined. Gregory had been systematically siphoning funds from our joint accounts into a separate, secret account for over a year. He had been wining and dining Cassandra at expensive restaurants, purchasing lavish jewelry for her, even researching beachfront properties in her name, all while lecturing me about the need to tighten our belts for retirement. Then came the irrefutable proof, text messages I discovered when he carelessly left his phone unlocked one evening. Messages filled with their plans for a new life together. Messages detailing how he was finally breaking free from our stifling marriage. Messages outlining their intention to depart for Miami the day after Amelia's graduation, the very day he had chosen to detonate his bombshell at her celebratory dinner. What Gregory had forgotten, or perhaps in his monumental arrogance never fully grasped, was my professional background. I had been a finance professional for 30 years. I understood money trails, asset tracing, and the intricate dance of financial investigation. And most importantly, I remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed 28 years ago, an agreement that he had insisted upon, ironically, to protect his then modest family money and his future earnings. An agreement that contained a meticulously worded fidelity clause, a clause that, in his haste and self-absorption, he had clearly forgotten, a clause that was about to become his financial undoing. While Gregory was gleefully plotting his grand escape with Cassandra, I was diligently building my case. I consulted with Philip Anderson, one of the sharpest divorce attorneys in Augusta. I documented every hidden transfer, every suspicious expenditure. I gathered irrefutable evidence of his affair. I had divorce papers drawn up, ready to be filed. I timed everything with precision, knowing Gregory, in his performative consideration, would want to wait until after Amelia's graduation to avoid ruining her big day. He never imagined I would preempt his drama, that the papers were filed with the court that very morning, sealed and not yet visible in the public record, but legally in motion. He thought he was in control. He had no idea I was always 3 steps ahead. I didn't return to the restaurant. My part in that particular farce was over. Instead, I drove to our home, the spacious colonial in Augusta's historic district that we had purchased 15 years ago, a house filled with memories, both cherished and now irrevocably tainted. The house that Gregory, according to the text messages I'd seen, had already callously promised to Cassandra as their future love nest. I parked in the driveway and calmly entered what had, for over a decade, been our shared space. Everything looked the same: the family photos on the walls, the antique grandfather clock that had belonged to my father, the worn leather couch where Gregory and I had once whispered dreams of our future together. Yet, in an instant, everything had irrevocably changed. I went upstairs to the master bedroom and opened the walk-in closet. Sure enough, Gregory's expensive suits and casual wear were already neatly packed into several large suitcases, tucked away in the back, ready for his planned swift departure the following day. I had to smile, albeit grimly, at his predictable meticulousness when it came to his appearance, contrasted so sharply with his carelessness in matters of the heart and finance. My phone buzzed incessantly, a flurry of messages from concerned and likely scandalized friends still at the restaurant, from Amelia, desperate for an explanation, even from Gregory's sister, Diana, who had flown in from Charleston for the graduation. I responded only to my daughter, my heart aching for her. "I'm okay, sweetheart. This isn't your burden to carry. Please try to enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. I love you." I had shielded Amelia from the ugly truth for months, not wanting to overshadow her crucial final semester with the corrosive acid of our marital breakdown. She would be angry, hurt that I hadn't confided in her sooner, but I knew her pragmatism, a trait she'd thankfully inherited from me, would eventually lead her to understand. 3 hours later, I heard Gregory's car skid into the driveway, the sound of a man in a furious hurry. The front door slammed open with a violence that reverberated through the house. "Bianca!" he shouted, his voice raw with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "Where are you?" I was sitting in the living room, calmly reviewing documents on my laptop. I closed it slowly as he stormed in, his face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson, the cream-colored envelope, my carefully prepared divorce filing, clutched in his trembling hand. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving the papers as if they were contaminated. "You served me with divorce papers? Today? Of all days?" "I thought it aligned rather nicely with your own plans, Gregory," I replied, my voice deliberately calm, a stark contrast to his sputtering fury. "You announced you were starting your new life. I'm simply helping to facilitate that transition, legally and efficiently." "You had no right to do this," he seethed. "I had every right," I interrupted, my voice steady, devoid of the anger that simmered beneath the surface. "Just as you apparently felt you had every right to conduct an affair, systematically loot our joint finances, and publicly humiliate me in front of our daughter, our family, and our friends. We all make choices, Gregory. These are the consequences of yours." A smug, almost relieved expression suddenly crossed his face. "The prenup expired years ago, Bianca," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Any decent lawyer will tell you that. You're bluffing." I allowed myself that small, knowing smile again. "Actually, Gregory, it didn't. If you'd bothered to read it carefully, or perhaps consult an attorney before embarking on your grand scheme, you would have noted Section 12. It specifically states that the fidelity clause and all attendant financial stipulations regarding breaches of that clause remain in full effect for the entire duration of the marriage. Your own lawyer— Oh, wait, you didn't actually consult one before today, did you? Too busy planning your romantic getaway, I suppose?" The color drained from his face as the implications of my words began to penetrate his arrogant self-assurance. The prenuptial agreement he had so confidently insisted upon 28 years ago, the one designed to protect his potential future wealth from my then more substantial family money, was about to cost him almost everything. The house, the vacation property in Savannah we'd purchased with joint funds, though primarily funded by my earnings, his portion of our substantial retirement accounts, all jeopardized by his infidelity, meticulously documented and now legally actionable thanks to that forgotten clause. His grand dramatic gesture at the restaurant, his triumphant declaration of freedom, had just become the most expensive, self-sabotaging announcement of his entire life. The carefully constructed narrative of his victimhood was crumbling before his eyes. My text from Philip Anderson, my attorney, received while I was at Diana's, confirmed it. The emergency filing had been approved. The accounts I had identified as containing misappropriated funds were frozen. Gregory now had severely limited access to cash, just enough for basic living expenses, certainly not enough to purchase beachfront property or impress Cassandra with lavish gifts. His grand escape was grounded before it even began. "You can't do this to me," Gregory stammered, collapsing onto the sofa, the fight draining out of him, replaced by a dawning, pitiable panic. We built this life together. And you chose to end it, Gregory, I replied, my voice even, though not quite in the spectacular, financially ruinous way you had envisioned for me. His phone buzzed persistently in his pocket. He glanced at it, a flicker of annoyance, then ignored it. Cassandra, no doubt already at their non-existent new apartment, wondering why her sugar daddy wasn't following their carefully orchestrated, illicit plan. You've always been calculating, Bianca, but this is cold, he said, trying a different, more pathetic tack, perhaps hoping for a sliver of my old sympathy. What about our history? 28 years together, does that mean nothing to you? I studied him then, this man I had loved, supported, and sacrificed for nearly 3 decades. The man who had held my hand through the grief of 2 miscarriages before the joy of Amelia's birth. The man who had once, long ago, surprised me with a spontaneous, romantic weekend trip to Charleston for our 10th anniversary, a memory now tainted by the bitter reality of his present deceit. When had he transformed into this selfish, cruel stranger? Or had this core of narcissism always been there, hidden beneath a veneer of charm, a flaw I had been too devoted, too forgiving to truly see? Our history meant everything to me, Gregory, I answered, the words laced with a truth that ached. That's precisely why your betrayal, your calculated cruelty, cut so deeply. His expression softened almost imperceptibly, a brief flicker of his old self, perhaps sensing an opening, a chance to manipulate. Then maybe we can fix this, he ventured, his voice hopeful. I made a mistake. People make mistakes, Bianca. This wasn't a mistake, Gregory, I stated, my voice hardening, any lingering sentimentality evaporating. This was a meticulously calculated plan spanning more than a year. You systematically moved our money. You looked at property with Cassandra. You planned to announce our separation in the most public, humiliating way possible to ensure I wouldn't make a scene. You recorded our conversations, he blurted, as if just remembering another layer of his exposure. That's illegal. Not in Georgia when one party consents, and certainly not when those conversations detail plans to defraud your spouse and occur within your own home, I countered. His face was a mask of disbelief. He stood suddenly, agitated. I need to make some calls. Of course, I said. Your attorney might be a good start. I'll be staying at Diana's tonight. Diana's? He sputtered. My sister's house? I nodded. She's quite upset with you, actually. She was the one who first spotted you and Cassandra together last Christmas. She confronted you then. You promised her it was nothing, that you would end it. When she realized you hadn't, she came to me. This was another blow he hadn't anticipated. Diana and I had always been close, a bond forged through years of family gatherings and shared confidences. But Gregory, in his self-absorption, never imagined his own sister would choose my side, would choose integrity over blind loyalty. The preliminary hearing took place in a small, sterile courtroom on a rainy Tuesday morning. I arrived with Philip, my attorney, composed and prepared. Gregory trailed in with a young, flustered lawyer he had clearly retained in haste, an associate from a corporate law firm who looked distinctly out of his depth in family court. Gregory's poor choice of representation was just another consequence of his rushed, ill-conceived exit strategy. The judge, an older woman with sharp, discerning eyes and an air of no-nonsense efficiency, reviewed the prenuptial agreement meticulously. This document appears to be in order, Counselor, she said, looking over her reading glasses at Gregory's attorney. Do you contest its validity? The young lawyer cleared his throat nervously. Your Honor, we believe the agreement has expired due to the length of time that has passed. Section 18 clearly states— The judge cut him off, reading aloud from the document. Section 18 states the duration is for the term of the marriage plus any legal proceedings resulting from its dissolution. There is no expiration date indicated. She continued, Furthermore, the evidence of systematic fund transfers by Mr. Caldwell appears to violate the financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. She shuffled through the papers Philip had submitted. I am ruling to maintain the freeze on all joint accounts pending full financial discovery. Mr. Caldwell's personal account, the one he was secretly funding, will remain accessible to him for his personal expenses. The family home, as stipulated in the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, will remain in Mrs. Caldwell's sole possession during these proceedings. Gregory's face flushed a dark, mottled red. "This is outrageous," he muttered, loud enough for me, and more importantly, the judge, to hear. The judge fixed him with a stern, unwavering look. "Mr. Caldwell, I suggest you review the agreement you signed more carefully with competent counsel. This court will reconvene in 30 days for the full hearing after discovery is complete." Justice, it seemed, was not only blind but also had a keen eye for contractual details and a low tolerance for arrogance. As we left the courtroom, Gregory, his bravado shattered, caught up to me in the hallway. "Bianca, please," he begged, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. "We need to talk about this reasonably. 28 years together. It has to count for something." "It counted for everything, Gregory," I replied, my voice quiet but firm. "Until you decided it didn't." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the echoing courthouse corridor, the full weight of his choices finally crushingly beginning to sink in. Word of Gregory's public humiliation and subsequent legal drubbing spread like wildfire through our social circle. Friends called daily, some offering genuine support, others barely concealing their hunger for salacious gossip. I maintained a dignified silence about the details, simply stating, "Gregory and I are separating. These things happen." Meanwhile, his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. The image he had so assiduously cultivated, successful businessman, devoted family man, was tarnished beyond repair. The financial freeze meant he couldn't follow through on the lavish promises he'd made to Cassandra. The beachfront property they had been planning to purchase together remained a distant, unattainable dream. The luxury car he had put a deposit on had to be forfeited. 2 weeks after the hearing, Diana called, her voice tinged with a distinct note of wry amusement. "Have you heard the latest?" she asked. Cassandra moved out. Apparently she discovered that Gregory's business isn't quite the goldmine he portrayed, and the substantial savings he'd boasted about simply don't exist beyond what was in his now very restricted secret account. She reportedly told a mutual friend that she didn't sign up to date a man with financial problems and a penchant for public self-destruction. I couldn't help but laugh. He always was adept at creating illusions, less so at maintaining them. Meanwhile, I was not just surviving, I was rebuilding and, more importantly, building something new. The financial security I had painstakingly maintained, entirely separate from our joint accounts, afforded me a freedom Gregory hadn't anticipated, a freedom he had actively tried to curtail. I rented a small, charming office space downtown and began setting up Caldwell Financial Transitions, the consultancy I had dreamed about for so many years. My first clients were 2 women referred by Philip, both navigating the treacherous financial waters of their own contentious divorces. Word of mouth quickly brought more. I specialized in empowering women, helping them understand and secure their finances during major life transitions, divorce, widowhood, career changes. The work was instantly, deeply fulfilling in a way my corporate job with its endless meetings and political maneuvering had never been. Amelia, who had bravely started her new marketing job in Charleston amidst all this chaos, called regularly, her voice filled with pride. "You're helping people during their absolute worst moments, Mom," she said. "You're giving them strength." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me earlier in life," I replied. "Preparing women for whatever might come. Being needed for my expertise, my wisdom, rather than just my caregiving, was a novel and incredibly empowering experience." The final divorce hearing fell, with a poignant irony, on what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. Gregory arrived looking haggard, a shadow of his former self. I later learned his handcrafted furniture business was struggling significantly without my steady income to subsidize it and my financial guidance to steer it. Cassandra was long gone, already reportedly dating a real estate developer from Savannah, her sights set on a more solvent future. Most of our mutual friends had quietly distanced themselves from Gregory after learning the full, sordid story of his deception. The judge, citing the irrefutable evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, upheld the prenuptial agreement in its entirety. Gregory left with his personal possessions, his floundering business, and the meager contents of his private account, which, after paying his ill-equipped attorney, was barely enough to secure a small, rented apartment. I retained our home, my robust retirement accounts, and the lion's share of our joint investments, exactly as the prenup stipulated in cases of proven infidelity. The justice was not just legal, it was exquisitely poetic. The very document he had insisted upon to protect himself from a gold digger had become the instrument of his own financial reckoning at the hands of a wife he had catastrophically underestimated. As we left the courtroom for the final time, Gregory approached me, his voice quiet, almost broken. "I made a terrible mistake, Bianca," he said. "Is there any chance we could—" "No, Gregory," I interrupted, my voice gentle but unshakably firm. "That door is closed." He nodded slowly. "I understand." And for the first time in a very long time, I believed he actually did. "I hope you find happiness, Bianca," he added, a surprising sincerity in his tone. "You deserve it." It was, perhaps, the first truly honest thing he had said to me in years. 6 months later, Caldwell Financial Transitions was thriving. I had moved to a larger office space and hired 2 associates. The woman who had once defined herself as Gregory's wife and Amelia's mother had discovered a new, more authentic identity: mentor, successful business owner, and an unwavering advocate for women's financial independence. The envelope I had handed Gregory at that fateful graduation dinner hadn't just been my meticulously prepared escape plan. It had been the key that unlocked a door to a future I never knew existed. Behind it, I found not just revenge but a profound and deeply satisfying reinvention. In securing my financial future, I had also reclaimed something far more valuable: myself. When a life you've carefully built is threatened by betrayal, remember that composure and preparation are your strongest allies. My husband's public pronouncement was meant to be my undoing, but it became the catalyst for my liberation. Don't let someone else's deceit define your narrative. Instead, arm yourself with knowledge, secure your independence, and trust in your own strength to rewrite your story. Sometimes, the end of one chapter, no matter how painful, is simply the beautifully disguised beginning of a far more fulfilling one, a future where you are the sole, empowered author.